really want to go back to being the teacher that I was my first year of teaching, this high energy, this guy who's playing characters and treating it more like a performance. You're giving a product and a form of entertainment for the students. And I just, as the school year went on, like the relationships and the moments that I was having with students just weren't the same. And I found myself getting really frustrated. And, after the school year was done, I take a look in the mirror. I'm like, and, I had some reflective conversations with my wife. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's, you're trying to be someone that you're not at this phase in your life. And kids can pick up on that. I think it's the same thing with coaching. When you're trying to be someone other than yourself, like, they know. So whether it's with a U9 team or a U16 team, I got to be Dominic. As you're coaching everything, you end up coaching nothing. So same thing with these, like, as we co-construct IDP plans, like, they have to be concise, and you have to give them enough that they can actually be able to work at it. Because if you just give them a bunch to work on, they're going to be trying to work on everything at the same time, that they're going to actually make progress on none of it. A good coach and a good teacher is able to work with any age group. It's all about just knowing who your audience is, and then the way you talk, you change for your audience. But someone that coaches U19 should also be able to still coach a U9 if they're a good educator. So I always really enjoyed that, and like I've taken that too with me in like the classroom. It's just really what it is, about knowing your audience, And I'm here now going into year 8 of coaching and have an opportunity to see, okay, like local leagues at the club level versus ECNL versus Girls Academy versus high school versus college. For me, like, what I know is like I feel like the coaching points don't change. Right, all it is now just like the speed of play and the technical execution, and just as the older it gets, like the cognition, the processing is a little bit different. They're able to perform like those higher mental operations and higher thinking skills. But yeah, for like in terms of like how I interact with kids versus adults, like there's only slight differences. It just comes down to like that language and again that audience piece.
Hello and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with me, Coach Luca. As always, I hope you're enjoying the recent content, the recent episodes, the recent insights, and as you can see, the launch of the Personal Learning Hub, which gives you so many opportunities to reflect, really learn, and continue professional development along the way. There's going to be so many more resources to support you through the podcast, whereby the podcast can become a beacon, a hub for you to continue to take so much away into your professional practice. However, it's another week, it's another episode, new content to be shared, new insights, new experiences, new stories, new thoughts, new reflections, and new insights. I'm really excited to release this episode. This was one that me and the guests were looking to build upon for such a period of time, and we finally got round to making this discussion happen. This is by far one of the best discussions that I've ever had, and I really enjoyed the insights in terms of the work and delivery that is being worked upon within the program by this coach. This week I'm delighted to welcome Coach Dominic Rutan. It was so fantastic to hear his insights, his stories, his upbringing, his philosophy, and how this complements the coaching team that he works with, and what he wants to bring to his players, and how he initiates the thought process in terms of how he brings across his philosophy, the style of play, how he works with his players, and how he contributes to the coaching team to bring this all together. He talks about his coaching mentors and how he's been able to learn so much from them, and delivers his outlook towards the future. Within this episode, we cover mental skills, performance and relationships, fostering those relationships, emotional vulnerability, stepping away from coaching and just having that step back, that thought process, that reflective piece, which is really important. We talked about coaching for cognition, that stimuli and mental processing. There is so many fantastic insights which really relates to the learning process for coaches, for players within this episode. This is so much more than reflection, so much more than just those insights, but really relating that teaching and learning element into that coaching prospect. This is such an interesting episode, how that teaching and learning bridges that gap between the coaching process and builds an all-round program which is going to be more beneficial to the players rather than just coaching them and doing some mental performance with them. The quality of the teaching and learning which is developed by the thought process, by the mind, which is delivered through the work that Dominic does, is so important. We talked about right time, right content. We talked about right time, right context, pedagogy, cognitive learning, multiple intelligences. We talked about profiles and how this looks. We talked about that teaching and coaching combination. We talked about disconnection, vulnerability, and reliability. We talked about then, can you coach creativity? This was such a wonderful conversation because creativity, teaching, learning, mindset, reflections, that quality of coaching, stepping back as a coach and looking at the big picture, contributions towards the coaching team and how this looks, that mental performance, those relationships, creativity, curiosity. We talked about then the insights into the program and how this then looks in terms of the impact of the players, how this is delivered within the work, within the strategies and how this takes place. Where would the players like to be by the end of their journey? Where would Dominic Rutan like to be by the end of their journey? The key question here that is posed by Dominic is, where are we by the end of the journey? That's such an important reflective piece because you have to look upon the journey, you have to program yourself to look towards the future and where you'd like to be by the end of the journey. And once you reach that and you've had all those experiences internally, externally, all the barriers that you've come across, everything which may have hit you hard, everything which you've really enjoyed and how you're going to take those into the future, those experiences in terms of how they've shaped you, the development and delivery of expectations, performance, relationships, what has grounded you and your outlook towards the future, how you're taking these motivations into play. There's so many considerations for players and coaches to really ask themselves. But this key question, where are we by the end of the journey? Have we had growth? Have we had positivity? Are there more positives than negatives? Have we really grown? What insights have we done? How much reflection have we taken? How much time have we allocated to coaching and mentoring? How much time have we allocated to coaching and learning? How much time have we allocated towards teaching and learning? How much time have we allocated towards our own personal processes, whereby once we're at the end of that journey, we've really been able to reflect back and go, yes, I have made that difference. Yes, I've connected with the players. Yes, I've grown as a player. So different on the different perspectives that there are, whether you're listening as a player, a teacher, a coach, another professional or fan, this gives you a great insight in terms of the wonderful work which is being delivered by Dominic and the wider team which he is part of. But these key questions play such an important part. As you coach, everything you're coaching is so important. This is the importance of that context, that delivery, those relationships, the importance of time, which has been touched upon in previous episodes, how we must relate and connect with the players to build upon that stimuli, that learning, that cognitive process whereby they can take so much away, both on and off the field, which gives them further options beyond sport, beyond soccer, which is so important. We then talked about environments, microactions, and failure. Wow, this episode is jam-packed full of content. As said, this is one of the best conversations that I've ever had on a podcast, and I hope that you really enjoy this and take this away. There is so much within this episode. It is truly fascinating, truly enjoyable, and such a wonderful episode which you cannot miss. You can listen to the episode on Spotify, YouTube, and Podcast Addict. You can also find it on Twitter and LinkedIn. It is at TRC Podcast _ on Twitter. As you can see on screen, I'm Anthony_Luca96. Every time you drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, it does really help the podcast. Any comments that you leave, any engagements, it's helping it grow. So please continue to share, continue to follow, continue to like, continue to subscribe. It does really help share these wonderful guests and the amazing work that they're delivering and doing. So please share away, please engage. It does really help the podcast. I hope to see you all soon, and I hope that you're enjoying the content which is being released. But this is not an episode to be missed. So please share it with your peers, the other stakeholders that you're engaged with, because there is so much to take away within this episode. This week's episode is Dominic Rutan. With the amount of content in there, I suggest you listen to this a few times. So please sit back, enjoy, and take so much away. This is Coach Luca on the Reflective Coach podcast. Thank you for listening.
I can't imagine that world. I can imagine a world in which I'm no longer in the classroom. In a world where I'm no longer either on the pitch or I'm not involved with the game in any capacity. I couldn't imagine that. So hey, how you doing?
I'm good. You okay?
Yeah, great. Here, I'm just gonna change my my background here. Gotten really good with Zoom. I haven't been on Google Meets as much.
That's right, no problems.
Hey, so how many years is it now for your parents?
So I'm 26, so 26 years.
Dude, that's awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, it's class. Good amount of time, and so they got something proper planned on Saturday and stuff. It's just when I walked in and saw the anniversary cards, I was like, oh shit, I forgot all about it.
Yeah.
But
It's all good. It happens.
Yeah, but yeah, they're calm with it.
You're a busy guy. How many sessions is it for you?
What
Is it like you get like a couple in a week?
It depends. So, like at the moment, I've had a really good response rate and stuff. So, I've been quite lucky to sort of have someone every night almost. So it was only last week I had like 1 or 2 cancellations, but last week I recorded like 6 episodes or 4 or 5 episodes. I released 2 as well in that week. I was supposed to have someone on yesterday, but they cancelled. I had one on the night before. I think I got 1 Friday, 2 more Saturday, and then a few more next week. Then, so it's been a heavy month, but it's been probably the best month since I've done it. So,
cheers to that. Yeah, Manya was telling me that you guys had just done one recently.
Yeah, no, she was awesome, Manya. Really enjoyed talking to her, and it was really good episode. She was like awesome to listen to. But very lucky because all like yourselves in America are just coming back to me like, yeah, I want to come on, and yeah, I'm happy to do this and stuff. So when it comes to fitting you guys in, and you're like, yeah, afternoon 1:00, 1:32, I'm like, yeah, that works out sound for me. Gives you time to get home, have tea, and then start recording an episode. So it works out perfectly.
Love that.
Yeah,
but man, I'm glad we can make it work. I know we tried making them before, and then just once the B license got going, it was for everything else. It was game over.
Yeah, of course. And the B license is quite intense as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because they revamped it. So yeah, you got Garrett Smith, who's now the technical lead of it, and they updated the methodology, and they're just trying to raise the standard, and it just also it helped that the instructor I had, he used to be the technical lead for the A senior license, and his standards are very high, and he'll find ways to keep pushing you. So even if you feel like you had it all figured out, they would keep finding new ways to try and help you grow.
And that's exactly what you want from a course, and especially a course tutor and mentor, which you've got as well. So when it comes to that B, then is it quite easy to get on? Is it sort of difficult? What's it like, that process to get on?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The process for me, I mean, that's the first course, and for with the U.S. Soccer Federation that you're doing a formal application for. So to go from doing the national D license and the national C license with the Soccer Federation, I mean, you can just sign up for it as long as there's spots. So then to go to this, where it's the first time, they're like, all right, we want to see, you're like in the, have you ever seen the Learning Center?
Yeah.
And how it's laid out? Yeah. So from there, it's, hey, we need to see all of your up-to-date experience. We want verification documents from all of these different experiences that you've been on. So at the time I was with another club, so I had to get my DOC to sign off on it. I had to get my ECNL girls director to help sign off on it. And then obviously with George Mason, had to get Manya to help me with the verification document. So like that was part of it. And then obviously the coaching education that you've done. So the first time I applied for it, I got waitlisted. At the time I was just a club coach. I had also had experience coaching in high school, and then I was a volunteer assistant with some ECNL teams. Got waitlisted for that, and then I was doing my UEFA B in Germany last summer. Got a call and invited, they're like, hey, we just had a candidate drop out. We saw you on the wait list. Like, the course has already been going on for 2 or 3 weeks, but like, if you want a spot on it, like, you can join. I'm like, it's a great opportunity, but like, I'd rather start from the course fresh. Like, I'm still finishing up my UEFA B. And this is like right before the school year had started and college preseason. So I wasn't feeling it. So thankfully I got to apply again. And this time, on there, like now I have my UEFA B on there. And then my role with George Mason was on there. So, just the process for me, I feel like I got pretty lucky. But I'm also thankful for the work that I've put in with coaching education, because I've done quite a bit, as much as I can with different federations, associations that have worked out. But I know for other people I've talked to, it's been really frustrating for them, because they could have a similar resume for me, maybe even more so with their coaching experience, but maybe less with other opportunities with coaching education. And they're applying 2, 3, 4 times before they're finally getting in.
Absolutely, and it's great that you've been able to get on and even start and go, right, I'm going to start at this point and put yourself in that position, because sometimes jumping straight in isn't always the best thing that ends up working out as well. And starting on a course that can be so intense is needed as well at times. So it's good that you've done it, and great experience, and great that you've got it.
Yeah.
And but when you go on to it, so do you have to do like the American, like license 1, license 2, license 3, and then try to get to UEFA? How does that sort of work with like the American to UEFA system then?
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't know what the overlap there is. So, I think for the different federations, it's like an equivalency thing. So I believe for like the U.S. Soccer Federation, let's say that I had lived in Germany my whole life, and I'm coming over to the States for the first time. And I'm like, hey, I have a UEFA B. I think then they would accept you on to a B license course with the U.S. Soccer Federation, but they wouldn't jump you straight to the A. And then I know before I did the UEFA B with the German Federation last year, I was looking into the Scottish FA or the Irish FA. And I think like with having a USSF C license at the time, they said that would be good enough to get on to a C license course with either federation.
It's interesting because we used to have that here in Wales. So when I first started on my UEFA FAWB, which obviously in Wales, we had a coach come across from England. He said he had the UEFA C from England, but we wouldn't accept it here in Wales at the time. So we had to start again and go through the process. Whereas that's slightly changed now for us. Whereas we got rid of the FAWC. It's now UEFA C. So you might do your standard football leaders under FAW. Then it's bang straight UEFA C, UEFA B, A, and then Pro, hopefully. But like for other federations, for example, like America, they might, go, right, oh, we want you to do like all the American licenses and then go on to the UEFA. But, it's just working that out, because obviously America's awesome and got loads going on. But then the UEFA badges are also another awesome sort of experience to get at. But, going across away from America, whereas I'm quite lucky where I can get onto the UEFA because we're in the European nation as such. But for yourself, going to Germany, that's a big commitment in itself. Time, effort, commitment, language, travel, cost, paying for hotel, etc. It can be funded at times, but even the fact of that in and get given the time, etc., and then online distance learning and all that can be quite a lot to sort of balance out.
Right. Yeah, and I got a couple other people I know who have done, like my buddy Phil. He's doing his Scottish FA or the A license with the UEFA with the Scottish FA, and I mean to take 2 to 3 trips out there during the year with in season. It's tough. And any kind of like online work. I did just like the intro course with the Scottish FA. I think it's like their 1.1. I was able to do that last summer just for fun. But even then, like, I mean, thankfully, I'm also a high school teacher, so we get summers off, and you can be a little more flexible with time. But like during the school year, or like even in college, like once the season gets going, to be able to make that work with time zones, it's tough. I mean, like even now, like thankfully we're able to do this, but if it's during the school year, maybe I can't do anything until it's like the weekend. And that's assuming it works out with game schedules.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So, what's the next step now for you? UA4A, or have a bit of time off, or?
Yeah, gute Frage. I do know. I mean, regardless of like the U.S. Federation, I gotta wait a year. So I think from there, like I'll continue having some good chats with some other people to figure out whether I want to go with because they got the A youth and the A senior. So trying to pick which one's the better route to go there. I would love to do my UEFA A. If I do it personally, I'd love to be able to do it back home in Germany, but that'll be difficult, I think, because I got a little bit of insight last summer into the process where it's kind of like a points-based system, and the points-based system is based on your experience, and I think that's particularly your experience in Germany. So I don't know how, let's say, being an assistant coach at a college program, how that would translate over there, or if that, if they find some kind of way to make it acceptable. So I've heard great things about the Scottish FA, but then it goes back to your point about, that's multiple trips going out there, making the Zoom calls work. So with, having a club director role, being a high school teacher, and then also a college coach, that's really tough taking all that time off. And, I'm really thankful for the support that I had from all of these different groups just for my B license with the U.S. Soccer Federation. But with these higher courses, it's going to require more time off. So yeah, I'm honestly, to be honest, I have no idea right now where I'm going with my own coaching education. But in the meantime, because I'm also a coach developer with United Soccer Coaches, the hopes are in the meantime that I can kind of start getting going in that role and have an opportunity to start hosting my own coaching courses and start mentoring, whether it's at the recreational level or with some of their advanced courses like the National Diploma, Advanced National, or the Premier. I'm very, very thankful I got the opportunity to shadow Paul Marco on the Premier Diploma course this past week, because they were hosting in Northern Virginia, and did it with or as a partnership with Lyon United FC. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, is now trying to, because I have the experience doing it in the classroom, but working with kids is different than with adults who are also, they're getting an opportunity to do something that they're passionate about. So trying to give them that experience and to help challenge them and to help them grow is now kind of a different capacity to work in.
Absolutely. It's that consideration of moving from adults to kids and kids up to adults, and sometimes that transition or opportunity doesn't always fit in and isn't there yet. So I've been quite lucky where I can work with 19s, and I was last year. So I've been to a few of our senior sessions, so as adults. And whilst I've gone across to the adults, I'm like, would I want to manage them full time yet? At my age, although I'm 26, I'm an adult, and I'm in and around some of their ages, some of them are older, etc. I'm like, would I want to manage a team of adults now at this point? And I'm like, probably not. I'm enjoying youth. I still enjoy youth. If the adult scene comes along and I spend a year, 2 years, and then I go, do you know what, I want to stay in adults or go back to youth, that might come along, but it doesn't have to be this, right, from like kids to youth to adults. And unless you're, wanting to be Jurgen Klopp, etc., right. Sometimes finding the level and where you want to be, it's nothing. You don't have to progress.
Right, but I remember when I first started coaching, with my very first youth teams, it was U9 and U11. So for the U9 age group, so this is 2011s, and my age group lead at that time, his name was Dan Raven. Awesome coach. I mean, this guy, like for his role in the club, because he was the director of player development, he could remember every single kid's name like learning at one time. And so anytime he was at the club, anytime he was at the fields and he saw a kid, like he would know them. I'm like, who is this guy? It's like the godfather of soccer out there. But I remember him telling me like a good coach and a good teacher is able to work with any age group. It's all about just knowing who your audience is, and then the way you talk, you change to your audience. But someone that coaches U19 should also be able to still coach a U9 if they're a good educator. So I always really enjoyed that, and like I've taken that too with me in like the classroom. It's just really what it is about knowing your audience, And I'm here now going into year 8 of coaching and have an opportunity to see, okay, like local leagues at the club level versus ECNL versus girls academy versus high school versus college. For me, like what I know is like I feel like the coaching points don't change, right? All it is now just like the speed of play and the technical execution, and just as the older it gets, like the cognition, the processing is a little bit different. They're able to perform like those higher mental operations and higher thinking skills. But yeah, for like in terms of like how I interact with kids versus adults, like there's only slight differences. It just comes down to like that language and again that audience piece.
And I love that. And that's as you're speaking now, I'm thinking about someone who I've had previously on the pod, and he was saying that he's transitioned from youth to adults, and he was stepping up this season to go in to do it. And he made the point of just delivering the same sort of methodology or the same approach or same type of session plan, but just tweaking it in terms of delivery. And there's nothing to say what he was doing with his youth he can't do with the adults. And it was a good point, because some people think, right, I go to this age group, I've got to have a complete different, say, curriculum, a complete different plan. But no, sometimes you can take that core plan and just go, right, I got U9s, I might got U16s next week, then I might drop back down to U5s, but my delivery might be different. So I might just, break down the coaching points a little bit more. I might ask more questions for the older age groups, that technical speed, as you say, those points that you might layer on, how you deliver, how you engage with players. So just little things tweaking it doesn't mean that you have to change your entire persona. So if I went and saw Coach Dominic, I would be like, oh yeah, I see him under 9s this week, wicked. And then I go and see him with 16s next week. I'm like, two different coaches. And sometimes that doesn't marry up, and sometimes, coaches get lost and overthink. But I think, as you say there, and building on that point, is it doesn't have to be something entirely different.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Because the moment you get, totally different, and then you start delivering different, you're sort of chipping away from your true self, and then, you're not really delivering it, because you got to have those different styles, and then you become maybe uncomfortable with age groups. And whilst you're doing that, you're not really becoming comfortable with, say, delivering to that group and going, right, this is my skill set, and I'll just tweak it this way. And then you're sort of going, oh, how can I balance this, or how can I balance that? And, we can get lost in the coaching world as it is.
Yeah, and it's like to your point, I think, like you're saying, you're chipping away from your true self. The thing that I've found, like as I continue to get older and get more experience, whether it's on the pitch or in the classroom, like kids nowadays, like it's really easy for them to tell, I think, if you're not being authentic. And I remember when I made a change from one high school to the other, I remember like I had this conversation with myself, and at the time she was my girlfriend but not my wife. We were having this conversation. I told her, like, I really want to go back to being the teacher that I was my first year of teaching, this high energy, this guy who's playing characters and treating it more like a performance. You're giving a product and a form of entertainment for the students. And I just, as the school year went on, like the relationships and the moments that I was having with students just weren't the same. And I found myself getting really frustrated. And, after the school year was done, I take a look in the mirror. I'm like, and, I had some reflective conversations with my wife. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's, you're trying to be someone that you're not at this phase in your life. And kids can pick up on that. I think it's the same thing with coaching. When you're trying to be someone other than yourself, like they know. So whether it's with a U9 team or a U16 team, I got to be Dominic.
Absolutely. And when you had those, say, impacts in relationships in a way, because, the authenticity was really important, did you find that hard to sort of cope and deal with and going, oh, I don't have that sort of stable relationship, or this relationship hasn't been as strong, or it's not as strong as what I've got with, say, James or whatever? How did you cope with that?
Yeah, I mean, no, it was tough. It was really tough, and I got really frustrated with teaching that year, because my first 2 years of teaching, for example, I mean, so I had my wedding in June, and three of my former students were there for my first 2 years of teaching. They were all two of them were from the class of 2018, and one was from the class of 2020. And these are three students that I had really great individualized relationships with. And when I first started teaching, and it's still with my coaching, one of my three pillars is fostering those individualized relationships with students and student athletes. So to go into this year of teaching, so this was year six of teaching, so 2021 to 2022. To go into that year and tell yourself, okay, I want to go back to the teacher that I was when I first started teaching, which is all about those individualized relationships, and to be able to connect with students, in a way where they felt comfortable with you, and that, they had the capacity to be vulnerable, and now you're getting to help them in ways that's just more of learning content and concepts. So to go from that to, okay, I'm trying to replicate it, I'm not finding the same success. The relationships with students don't feel as close, and there isn't that degree of emotional vulnerability. At that point you're feeling like, okay, well, now I'm just some guy that's standing in front of the room delivering content. Like the connection isn't there. And if my whole why for teaching is for the kids, and I feel like I don't have them, um, that's tough, because then you ask yourself, like, why am I here? And thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had to experience that with coaching, because coaching for me, being on the pitch, that's the perfect classroom. But in a classroom setting, when kids are your why, and it's not quite happening with the kids, and that you got, when you're looking in the mirror, that you're a key component of that problem. It was really frustrating. So the conversation going from that summer going into this past school year is like, just recognizing that this is the person that I am now in this phase of life. I've had these experiences from the past 6 years, and this person that I used to be is awesome, but that's just not who I am now. And you can't continue being that same person, because at some point it doesn't line up. And I think the kids that we have now in today's setting, it's very quick for them to pick up on that,
And there's a
and
lot.
and they're not engaged.
Of course, and there's a lot within that, as you say, engagement, emotional vulnerability, how, you're looking at aligning yourself and maybe marrying that up to where you're at, and maybe moving forward, finding yourself, overcoming relationships, developing those relationships. There's a lot within that, as you say, and there's a lot to really sort of unpack and take away. And when it comes down to that, and I'm just thinking here, coaching is a difficult world. Sometimes we can be liked, sometimes we can be unliked, and that we all try our best to accommodate to every player in front of us. We build those relationships. We want to put them at the forefront. And at the end of the day, if they are on scholarship, or if they're choosing to play for you or be part of that club or program, then they're trying to come because they want to play soccer or they want to play sports. So, we're there to coach, we're there to provide them with the tools to become better, etc., and give them the opportunities. But whilst they're there, and, we might not win over every player, and that's hard, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes personalities don't marry up. But would you ever define, a point where you'd be like, right, I'm not feeling that I'm being well received, or not feeling that I'm being well liked here, so therefore I'm like, what's the point in doing it?
Yeah, and I mean, I've had those combos. I mean, I think the piece always remain the same, is that kind of that entertainment piece. When I was in high school, I did theater, and I really enjoyed that. And this is before coaching ever came into the picture, and I got the blessing in discovering that. But going to college, like I had the debates, like, do I want to try to go a theater route or do I want to go into teaching? And I ended up going with teaching because I thought that offered a more stable path in the future. And I remember I was a sophomore in college, and I met up with my former theater teacher, and I talked to him about this decision I made for the path I was going to take in college, and he told me, like, Dom, like, teaching is just like another form of theater, and he framed it that way for me. And and I always really enjoyed it, and it really helped me think about how I can make teaching fun for students that's going to be engaging. Because I mean, sitting in a classroom for 90 minutes it can be a stretch. So I think for me, like that part has always remained the same. But again, it and that, I mean, it is the part that I haven't asked myself and spent enough time reflecting. But to the hypothetical that you pose, if I ever am at a place where I feel like I can no longer gauge my audience and that there's that disconnect, at that point, does the why need to change? Do you need to reframe your teaching philosophy? Or what are the other conversations that you need to be having with yourself, where you're finding the room for growth? What I have a hard time imagining is never being in a position where I'm in an education setting. Mm. Now, whether that's continues to be in the classroom, or is it on the pitch, or is it in a classroom with now student coaches and coaching education? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good one, man. I haven't gotten there yet, but I mean, it's always like when you first start teaching, it's like you're like the shiny brand new toy, and like so like all the kids are like, oh snap, like it's this new teacher, like they got so much energy. I'm not old, I'm only 30, but like I don't have the energy that I had when I was 23. I was doing the whole Dead Poet Society, standing on desks. I still have the volume. I get told that I'm rather loud. I steal from Robin Williams, and I'll do like his good morning Vietnam thing, but it'll be like, good morning, first block, whatever. I still do that. But yeah, I think for me, where I'm at now, and kind of reflecting on this past school year in terms of the engagement piece, like I think the way that I talk to students now is of somebody that's it's now definitely like a generation removed. When I was first still teaching, I think I only had maybe a 4 or 5 year difference from my seniors. Mm. And so we were really close in age. So I think it made it easier in terms of relatability, one, for the kids, and two, maybe for them, maybe it was easier for them to open up a little because they saw me as being closer to them than, say, some of their older teachers. But I mean, now it's, the senior class, now I got 10 plus years on them. I ask kids, like, who's seen Anchorman? And maybe 2 kids raise their hand now. I'm like, or even The Office, like these kids, like now, like you reference things and like the references no longer land. And like now it's like, yikes. All right. I am starting to date myself here. So yeah, I think on that end, it's just really realizing kind of where I'm at, the phase of life that I'm in, and talking to, like, knowing, kind of going back to that audience piece. I am now talking to Gen Z. That communication style is different. Their attention, their engagement is different from talking to, the tail end of the millennial generation.
And I can completely relate with you there, because I first started working in schools from the moment I left school. So I left school at 18 after I'd done sixth form. I decided to have some time out from studying and went on straight into coaching. And I'd done a bit of CPD and professional learning around that, and was able to get out the different programs. And then I've gone back to uni and sort of made sure I've continued on that pathway. But being back in the school literally at the age of 19, I was very close to literally being a school leaver myself. So when I'm working back with kids, like I've just come out of school myself, it's like I haven't been away. I can relate to them, and I was chatting to them, and I had to remind myself, I'm like, yeah, I've left school. Like, I can't think I'm in a student phase anymore. I can't crack like the same kind of jokes in a way. I've got to draw that professional boundary. But what I really enjoy was that relatability. And as you say now, even though I'm 26 and I'm thinking of with my under-19s last year. There might be 10 years difference now between us. So I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to worry a little bit about that, rather than that 1 year difference going into 10 years difference. But that's just a sign of getting older that I'm a bit scared of in my own personal life, I suppose. But when that comes down to it, I still got that relatability because I can still have those conversations with kids.
Right.
I've got an older member of staff who works with me in my classroom and amazing and very good at the academic side, very knowledgeable, supportive, but she doesn't connect and relate to the kids, and therefore some of the kids don't have those relationships. And then I've sort of got to be the mediator between here and them and then try and rebuild and restore those relationships. And sometimes I sit there and I just watch and I'm like, right, it's difficult for her because she's got this professional boundary, she's good at what she does, but she doesn't have that relatability. So at that point, when I'm at her age, for example, how am I still going to relate to kids if they're disconnected from me? So I'm already pre-planning for the future and how that looks, but
Right.
I don't ever want to be disconnected from the kids or not have that relationship with them, or have them at a point where they're like, right, I don't even want to engage with you because I don't see a connection to you in any way. So that connection aspect is really important.
I mean, it's got to be there. I mean, otherwise, what are we doing? Whether it's with coaching or teaching, I mean, there's just so much information out there. So like especially with education, right? Like, I am not there just to deliver content. Kids can freaking go on Google and find whatever they want about a topic, assuming that like it's sourced and it's like legit. But like, I'm not there to deliver content. That's not why we're here. So like, if the relationships are there, and like that's why like individualized relationships for me is still around, especially like in a team setting. I believe if you don't have the individualized relationships, you are not going to get buy-in from players. And it does not matter. Like, I could be freaking Pep Guardiola at the youth level, or a Jurgen Klopp. I can have all of this information and knowledge, and I can see the beautiful game in my head. But if I don't have the buy-in, why are kids going to care? Why are student athletes going to care? And it's like, you have to get the buy-in. So to your point, the relatability piece, I think even as we get older, and maybe the relatability piece isn't the same, because what we grew up with and what our interests were growing up is a little bit different from what the generation now after us is having. I think as we get older now, what we can start leaning on is experience. And we can help be more in that guiding and mentor piece. And that's kind of, I think, where I'm starting to find myself in the conversations now with kids. Like, I've lived life for a little bit now. Like, I'm not, just a kid in my early 20s or mid 20s, still figuring myself out. Now, like, I'm a little more established in life. I have a family. Kids are coming up in the future. So, my perspective and my, frames of reference are a little bit different. I think that kind of helps shape conversations differently with students, that you can now service them or serve them in a different way.
I love that, and that sort of was leading me into my next question, where you look at where you're at now and that mentoring and being able to guide them, because you have that great relationship with kids, you're able to work with them every day and teach and be part of that sort of world and aspect. And whilst you're doing that, you're giving something back to them. You're able to give more and not just be in the classroom, but you're providing them with that world of knowledge. And although Google is there, how much of the life skills, how much of the mentoring, how much of the guidance can they really take away from Google? So that's where the importance of, say, teachers and that comes from. But whilst, opportunities arise and be there for us, I'm thinking of some of the senior leaders that I work with who are now deputy head teacher and head teacher. So they've obviously wanted to go down that line. They've obviously wanted to go into senior leadership. They want to, progress the school in different ways. They want to look at curriculum and so on. But whilst they're doing that, that's taking them further away from teaching, from connecting with the kids on, say, day to day, because they're not working with them as much. They don't have form groups, etc. anymore. And whilst it takes them away, some are happy with that, because as they get older, they might be like, right, I don't enjoy teaching much, but I still want to be involved in education, and I want to shape how that looks. And that's completely fine as well. But it's that balance, and not being at a point where you don't enjoy it and you're like, right, yeah, I'm here for the paycheck now. But whereas you're in that sort of similar position where you could go into, say, coach mentoring, and that might take you away further from the kids, and the more mentoring you do and then leading on courses and how that might build up, you could end up moving completely into a new role. But for you, if you're in that point where like, yeah, do you know what, I want to be in guiding, I want to be in mentoring, I like coach development, that's a great sort of opportunity and avenue for you. But whilst that would play out and say maybe come up, would that sort of hinder a thought decision making process, or hinder maybe you're thinking in a way you're like, this is taking me away from the kids full time?
Yeah, I mean, no, and I'll be honest. I think I think one of the reasons too why I got an opportunity to have the experience I did in my first couple of years of teaching is, at that time coaching had wasn't, you know, I was having this conversation the other day with Paul Marco, and he asked me, kind of about my work situation. So, usually people say like, the job that's your full time job is, what your first career is. So I told him, I'm like, teaching is what pays, but in my mind, coaching is my first career now. That's where I mean, it's what I love. Like I love it. It's my passion. Like if I had to step completely away from coaching, like I, I can't imagine that world. I can imagine a world in which I'm no longer in the classroom, in a world where I'm no longer either on the pitch or I'm not involved with the game in any capacity. I couldn't imagine that. So, but with that, like when I was first teaching, the only role that I had for the first 3 years was I was an assistant coach at a high school program, which for me was only in the spring. So I was only busy during the week from Monday through Friday. I still had nothing on the weekends, and there were some trainings that were in the morning before school, so that'll be free after school. So my first couple of years of teaching, I remember my first year teaching, I was averaging, I think, like going to like 15 different student events a month. All right, I was living at home with my parents. I did not have a love life at the time. I wasn't really seeing too many friends either. So I put in a lot of work in trying to be ingrained in the community and seeing my students outside of school, whether it's for their athletics, visiting, their jobs that they're working at, and finding opportunities to connect with them. Now, a typical year for me. So I'm a U13 through U15 director with the St. James FC Virginia in Northern Virginia. So training sessions for me are Monday through Thursday. So those are my evenings. Assistant coach with George Mason. So we have games Thursdays and Sundays. So I mean, coaching is anywhere from 5 to 7 days of the week. So where I'm at now, my teaching career, whereas before I was able to offer before school, after school, now it's, hey, you guys, and if I had to be honest with them, I'm like, you guys got me from 9 until 4:30, and I wish I could give more than that, but that is what I have to offer, and we will make the most time of it while I'm here. But outside of that, the time that I was able to put into it before, it's a conscious choice to be able to do what I love and to do that for myself while still also providing for family. Because I'm finding opportunities to get some more revenue streams. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a difference too. The work, just like with coaching, the more work you're able to put in outside of just being on the pitch goes a long way in developing that coach-player relationship, or also taking your team through the team development process. That was something that we talked a lot on the B license, looking at the Tuckman model of your team development process and all the pieces that go into it. And again, if you're only showing up to training sessions and games, and that's the only time you're putting into it, it's going to be hard to influence the team development process. So, also within the classroom, I mean, yeah, to answer your question, like the long answer is yes, it does have an impact on the relationship you're able to have with students now.
Absolutely, and again, there's a lot within that. But whilst you have that ability to teach as well as coach, it's a great combination of what you're able to take away from the classroom into your coaching delivery. So, I had a very good assistant manager at my grassroots club, and by trade, he's a salesman. And he was saying how he was
Mm.
changing into a mentor slash coach, and he had to set up a PowerPoint. So his supervisor or boss at the time was like, "Can I just see your PowerPoint? I want to see what your first mentoring session is going to look like, and let's discuss your points of how to do this." So she was sort of mentoring him. And he said, "I'm going to teach them this." And she said, "Are you teaching or are you coaching?" And so that's always stuck with me since. And I've always
Mm.
appraised that. And I'm like, it's literally impossible to work with kids and not teach them, because if they're coming in and you've got all these skills, all these technical areas, they're going to have to be taught. So you have to teach them the basics, or have to teach them how to do things. Then you're going to develop the technical skills, and that's where coaching comes from. But I think there is a fine line between coaching and teaching, but there's also great importance in that. So what we might take away from teaching, and sometimes this is starting to develop in coaching curriculums. But if you went into a typical coaching session, how many coaches are asking questions to pull answers out of kids and make sure they're understanding, and how are they comprehending their understanding, and assuring that the kids are getting the learning outcomes? So those questioning techniques and asking questions in different ways and multiple ways, you're going to find the answers coming from the kids in different. And then when the answers are not coming out, then you're able to give different components of what you're expecting, the objectives and learning delivery, from what our experience is within the classroom.
I completely agree, and that's why for me, I think like my why with coaching has changed over time. But I truly I do see coaching as the perfect classroom, like you're talking about. There's things that we get to pull from the classroom and we take onto the pitch, and some of the things, like, one, what do we have with soccer, football? You have high student interest. Whereas the classroom, like I teach. Last year I taught economics, psychology, and world history. So in that class, maybe I have some kids who love being there. This is their favorite subject, and I got other kids that are like, it's the second block of my day. I can't wait to third block when I go off to English, or I can't wait for third block when I go to PE. Right. So in terms of being on the pitch, though, and especially in high performance environments, you have that high student engagement and interest. Like, kids are there because they want to be there. Boom. You have different methods of differentiation because every student has a different learning profile. So now it's on us as the educators. I got to figure out how each individual student athlete learns, um, um, is able to retain info, what their cognition process is like. And I got to now pair the information to that. My delivery systems are different. One student's, like you're saying, it might be that guided discovery where I'm asking questions and they want to be able to process the info and think through it. Other kids, and maybe I just need to be more direct. I give them the information as a quick bit. You have other kids who are the visual learners. So, from there you can pull from, who's a Howard Gardner and his theory on multiple intelligences, and using that to try and shape the learning profiles of your student athletes. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. The amount of research that you can do on current pedagogy, and taking that from an education setting and bring that onto the pitch. I mean, you can do a real deep dive on that and have yourself a good time.
Absolutely, and this is why if I got a bit of time within my teaching day, so where I work in a behaviour unit, sometimes you might have set the kids off, and where we're able then to maybe find an hour within the day. Sometimes if they're cracking on with a bit of work and they've got some tasks, or they're working on coursework, that if they're in a way doing it and they're set up, we could maybe find an hour where we're lucky. So if they're off working, I might go, right, I've got a bit of free time now, I'm on top of everything. I might just read this paper because it's linking to learning theory and how I work with the kids, and how can I take that into, say, behavior management, etc. But when it comes down to reading and that research, then I find myself lost in going, right, how are they thinking, how are they reacting, why are they thinking this way, what questions can I ask them to really refine their learning, or that retainment, how can I build upon their learning blocks, how could I process information, how do they process it, what's the perception? And there's all these different questions coming into play, and then the more I'm reading into it, the more I'm going, right, oh, how can I look at this, how can I look at that, or this one says that, this person says that. And then you find yourself in that world, you're like looking at so many different theories, and then by the time you're coming out of it, you're like, yeah, I'm a professor today rather than a teacher, because you find yourself immersed in that world.
Yeah, you're living up there in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, and that's where the great relationships between teaching and learning and coaching is. And whilst we are coaching, we got a game program in front of us. It might be that soccer program. We may look at, say, interrelated domains. So these interrelated domains might be, so might have a focus on. So right now in our school, we got a focus on, say, teaching and learning, but our three interrelated domains are A, B, and C. So attendance, behavior, and culture. So on a football program, that might be talent development pathways, but the three related domains are, say, one, athletic skill, so that technical side, tactical, and so on, health and well-being of an athlete, and three, the life readiness, so the guiding, the mentoring, the coaching outside of it. So when it comes down to that program then, or a program that you work on, and obviously that program might be, say, moving your players from a program to scholarship. Would you say that you've got interrelated domains in terms of how you approach that over a period of year of working with a program of players?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like for me, the next piece, once you start with, okay, like for me, like, okay, how do I see coaching? Okay, I see it as, the perfect classroom. Okay, the next piece, I want to get buy-in from players. Okay, I need to put work into those individualized relationships. Now we can get to the next piece, and something's big for me, and I picked up these nuggets from Todd Bean and his TOGO methodology. But the next part there is coaching for cognition, because now everything else that goes in, in terms of tactical, your tactical understanding, for players, to technical execution. It's not just being able to do things technically, but being able to do them at the right time with the right context. If you're focusing on the cognitive piece, everything else relates to it. So it all starts with, players on the ball or even off the ball. How are they perceiving the field? And from there, ascertain the perceiving, how are they conceiving solutions to problems? If I take it the other route and I only focus on the technical piece, okay, I might be able to develop players that are really good on the ball within their own house or in small settings. But okay, now we put a stimulus in front of them, which is one defender, or I put in two stimuli, one defender pressuring, one defender providing cover. Doesn't matter how much technical work you can do. If you aren't able to perceive the problem in front of you, all that technical work that you just did, how's that going to translate to this current problem where now you're having to actually make a decision while you're on the ball? And so, yeah, for me, that's huge. I don't ever want to coach players to be robots and to have like these prescribed actions that I'm going to do. Okay, you're in this scenario. If you're in this scenario, you're going to do A, B, C. Okay, remember this. It's like with tests, like, as like a teacher, like I don't want to give multiple choice tests because they're just regurgitating information. Those are like low level mental processes, or they're really basic information, and then two, from like a multiple choice test, they have anywhere from a 20% chance to a 25% chance getting it right, depending if there's 4 answers or 5 answers. I can guess and maybe get it right. But like within the classroom, if you start moving to, okay, I give my students performance-based assessments where we're now checking for skills and their understanding of concepts, and they're having to take this information or these concepts and put it into something else and to create something. Now we're starting to engage those higher mental processes. Same thing with coaching. Like if I just tell my players, hey, here are all the solutions to the problems, and you need to do A, B, C thing, and if you don't do it and it is wrong, and I'm going to ream you out, like I'm just going to make little robot players who, one, are scared to fail, but then two, are never going to be able to unlock that next dimension in their playing ability, because their only focus on is, okay, coach told me I'm in this scenario, I need to do this thing regardless of what else is happening around me. Whereas if you coach for the cognition and you're asking players, hey, I want you to look, like pick your head up, I want you to tell me where are the defenders, where's the open space, and what is your relationship to your teammates? And you got the answers to those 3 questions. Now you can start conceiving some solutions to the problem, right? That should be telling you whether you can dribble in open space, whether I need to make a pass forward, whether I need to make an angled pass, so I need to make pass back. And then from there, as they get older, now you can start layering in some more of that technical stuff. Okay, I know based on the situation here, the defenders, here's the open space, here's the relationship to my teammates. Okay, maybe I want to be able to play a longer ball in a space to break lines. Okay, now we can start layering in, okay, what kind of passes are required? Is that a more lofted pass? Is it have the backspin so it stops, right before something for a player to run onto it? Is it a driven ball into space? Yeah. Sorry, now we're just now the brain's starting to get going a little bit, and that coffee's starting to kick in too.
I love that though.
Here we go.
Exactly, mate. Completely taken away, and I absolutely love that. And just bouncing off that and taking that away is absolutely perfect because again, there's so much within that, and that stimuli as well in terms of that mental processing. I had Coach Jason Edwards on 2 nights ago, and he was reflecting upon the time when he was playing in North Wales, and he said he had a coach who had two. He was a defender by trade, and the coach had a setup for two attacking players, and he had to try and break down the ball, so 1v1s, 2v1s, win the contest. And he was saying he was just getting frustrated by it. And so on the reflection of what you said there, so he's being stimulated by 1v1 and he knows he can win that. Suddenly it's 2v1 and there's a lot more challenge. So we've created stimulation and there's a challenge within that. But Jason ended up being overstimulated because it ended up going 2v1, 3v1, and he was struggling to have that success rate. So that mental processing, he ended up going really high in that mental processing platform, and then he came right down because he was struggling to process what was going on in front of him because he was overstimulated. And the coach said, right, it wasn't set up for success for you, it was set up for success of the attackers. So then that's the basis of that why in that mental processing, that stimulation. But trying to create successful, say, the attacking and the defenders, but then also knowing when you might lose a defender or lose a player that you have. Because in that situation, Jason said he lost it, walked off, had enough. And that's when you can overstimulate a player, overstimulate a young person, a student, etc. And they might go, do you know what, I've had enough of this, don't want to do it no more. Sometimes that's why you don't see players come back the week after. And as much as we then talk about high performance cultures and environments, I've started to reflect upon that because I've expected a lot from my players in terms of what I want from them, what I want to see. But you're only going to have the very committed, those who want to push themselves, be at that high performance level. And that's where you start to go, right, where do I want to be? And relating in that full circle to where you were earlier, where do I want to be where I am now? But also touching upon that robotics as well. We don't want robotic players. And certainly young people. So one thing that I've seen a lot in teaching right now is that we're making a lot of kids robotic. So we're taking away from that, ability to have problem solving, to critically think, to have that curiosity within learning. So it's like, right, line up outside the classroom. Now you're going to have a seating plan. Then you're going to do a starter. Then you do the main. Then I'm going to ask you questions. Then you finish. You repeat that 6 times a day, over 5 days a week, over a year, times by 12 years in education. The kids are robotic as, and I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and they had Neil deGrasse Tyson on, and all he spoke about was how much young kids are missing out on curiosity of learning. And that is something that I think about every day of the kids who are sat in front of me. So I work in behaviour, and I'm very lucky in a way, but I'm also unlucky because I work with the worst behaving kids, and sometimes them collected in one room, boom, that's a long day. But I'm looking around, I'm like, right, why are you here? I'm like, right, because you're not stimulated, you're not having this curiosity to learn, you're being made into a robot in what you want. So therefore, they're not enjoying education. Boom, their behaviour goes up, and then they end up with me. So then I've got to unfix those problems and stimulate them to try and get them to have some curiosity within learning. But I think that has to be for players as well, because they're going through that program, that scholarship, and they're being part of that program. But they have to be curious to go, Coach Dominic, can I do this more? What can I do about it? Why did you do that session today? Or can I ask you a little bit more about this? And sometimes I've taken that away, and some of the staff I work with, I just go, why? And they're looking at me, and I'm like, I literally want to know why you're doing it. What's your thought process behind it? And I just want to learn as much as possible. So there's so much in what you said there, and so much to really consider for any coach, educator, teacher, and so on.
Yeah, so my question for you, are you having a similar experience within a school setting? Do your kids really worry about the grades that they're getting?
So I've gone from a different school this year at the start to a new school. So I popped into my old school yesterday. So the one that I was at, very much yes to that answer. The school I've gone to, no. very different culture and dynamic. But if I focus on a school that was very worried about that, we were having assessments in every subject. So obviously they have all their basic, the science, their English, their maths, their history, their geography, a national language, music, ARI, PSE. So they're doing all these different subjects and they're getting assessed once a month in every one of these subjects. So therefore, naturally, this anxiety is increasing. They're worried about grades, and then some of the, say, less select or high performers of that class, of course they're going to be worried about it, and then at that point. So yes is my answer to that one then.
So have you ever seen the TED Talk? It's with Sir Ken Robinson.
No, I don't think I have that one.
Nope. Give that a watch. It will, like, first time I watch it at least once a year. Rock my world. The title of it, he had two other TED Talks, but the first one, the question that he posed is, do schools kill creativity? And I've been thinking about it, because then this coaching course that I got a shadow last week, one of the questions that came up, this is thinking like in a high performance environment, can you coach creativity? Can you teach creativity with your players? There's a couple things I want to pair that I just say, as I'm thinking, like, one of the quotes that Sir Ken brought around this idea that you have your core classes, which is usually social science and global studies, English/language arts, the sciences, mathematics, and then on the bottom end are like your fine arts and other elective courses. So with that, I think there's a correlation too with education, how it's run, and then also with coaching and this problem that we're posing. As kids go through school and they become progressively more and more worried about their grades and performing to get a grade, that fear of failure or of not doing well academically, their extrinsic motivation now becomes like they want to perform, they want to get the grade, so they're going to do what they need to do for the grade. They're not doing what they need to do for any other kind of learning, to have, like you said, that curiosity. So then if you link that with coaching and what we're seeing at youth levels, and it depends on their experience with the other youth teams that they're on, if they have a coach that encourages creativity, that encourages cognition, that lets them actually play and gives them a positive experience, how does that frame their development over time versus the players that, like, it's a very strict coach, the expectations are that you do X, Y, and Z things. Now is their performance based on just making sure that I'm doing what I need to do because coach said so, or is there that curiosity piece? Is there that creativity piece? And that's just, again, just, to come back to what we've been talking about, like these kind of relationships between education and the coaching setting as well, and things that bring over. But I don't know, when that question got posed by Paul Marco last week about can we teach creativity, it got me thinking back to this TED Talk. Yeah, give it a watch. Let me know what you think. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, it sounds awesome, and I've noted that down as you were talking then, and highlighted it quickly. But I I think that's such a great question, because then I'm reflecting upon, as you're asking those questions, as you're saying that, and I'm thinking of the young people in front of me. So I'm thinking ahead of tomorrow now, and I'm thinking, right, will they have curiosity? Do they have much creativity? So where I've gone from my last school to my current school, those answers would have been yes, my old school, but the current no. So as I go in with those young people tomorrow, I'm like, right, do they have the creativity? Do they have the curiosity tomorrow? I'm like, right, could I work with them? Can I coach them? Can I put them in a situation, or can I develop that long-term situation whereby they will be curious, they will be creative? And I think the answers to that is yes. So can you coach creativity? I think so. Is creativity and curiosity innate and naturally born? I think so, yes. But I think that's such an interesting topic and such an interesting way to sort of think and reflect upon things, and when it comes down to that. So if I was to ask you that question, what would your answer to that be? Can you coach creativity?
I think if you're looking at a multi-year process, yes. I think if you can create the conditions and you have a really clear player development framework in place that again provides the conditions for it, I think so. But again, like if we get to the point where if there continues to be this fear of failure and kids associate bad with failure, then it's never going to happen. You know, like this past season, like my 2010 team, they won games, they tied games, they lost games. We learned a lot. My 2009s weren't necessarily in, maybe not in the right brackets and tournaments, or not playing in the right league. They didn't lose any games. And they had maybe they had two or three games in which they were really challenged. That now it forced them to start solving problems. But we went through a whole season where they didn't have the right challenges. So how much are you learning from games in which you win versus games that you lose? Like I'd rather have, I don't ever want to lose, but when you lose games, there's so much more I think that we can take away from that than versus, oh, we played an opposition that we were able to have the majority of possession. We were able to create all these goal scoring chances. We denied them opportunities in the final third. Like we walked home and it was good. Like how much are my players going to take away from that versus, okay, it's a tournament final. It was 0-0 and then we end up losing 0-1. How much more lessons are we going to take away from that versus the other scenario? And like again, like we got to get back to a place we have. I can't generalize. I can't speak for all the coaches. I just think for students, especially like my settings, like we got to get back to like failure is okay. Failure is going to teach you. And like if you want that creativity piece, failing is going to happen. Creativity doesn't mean that everything works out every single time. That's not where innovation comes from. Innovation is coming from like, oh, I have this idea, oh, it works out, we're good every time. Like no, that's not innovation. Like failure is part of the process, and I think it's tough when you have kids in school systems where they're so worried about their grade point average and doing what it takes to get into college, and I got to take all of these advanced courses to stack my transcript so I can get into my school. And if there's one marking period that I got a B plus and I didn't get an A minus, like the world is over. And it's like what? No, like it's okay. Like the sun rises tomorrow. Like you're good, bud. But like kids get so like strung out by making mistakes, and they're scared to make mistakes. And like especially with a game that is like come on, there is no other sport like soccer or football. There really isn't. There's no other game where the ball is just rolling the whole time, and the only time you get a break is after 45 minutes. That's it. And the context, it changes every single second, and no scenario is going to be exactly the same from game to game to game to game to game. Every context changes just by slight micro actions. So failure is an innate part of it. And like, yeah, I don't know in a world of how can you teach and coach creativity without that?
And do you think then with, say, stakeholders such as parents, carers, family, that they're protecting and they're moving kids away from experiencing failure?
I think it goes back to that buy-in piece. It's like with teaching, it's not just a student teacher relationship. It's a student teacher relationship. Administration's involved, parents are involved. Those are all the stakeholders involved in the process. So at the youth level, it's not just the teacher and the coach relationship, but it's the teacher, the coach, whoever the age group lead is, or an academy director, and then it's also the parents. So it kind of comes back to that first part about those individualized relationships. If I don't have the individualized relationship with the student athlete, how am I going to get buy-in from them into what we're trying to do? If I have buy-in from the student and athlete, I think it makes it easier to get buy-in from the parent. If you don't have buy-in from the parent, they're not going to understand the long-term process. And again, there's another great video that I've shown in my economics classes and my psychology classes. It's with Simon Sinek, and it's, what's the title of it? I think it's like, why are millennials having a hard time in the workplace? He spends he talks about a few different conditions that have allowed for that. But one of them that he brings up is the society that we live in now, which a lot of it deals with that instant gratification, right? I go on Amazon Prime because I want my free shipping, damn it. Like, I want that within 2 days. Seasons, before, we could, if I was watching a TV show, you have to wait for a new episode every week. Now, whole seasons come out. I can sit down for a day or two. I can binge it out. I'm set. Dating. We got apps for dating now. It was no longer, still no way to go about it. You meet someone and, it happens. But, if you want to online date, that's an option. So there's just a lot more instant gratification in our society. And I think that has come with it with youth, where people want to see quick results, right? Why do parents and players sometimes go to private training? They want to go to private training because they want to get better. They want to work on individual skill sets. And the hope is that as I do this, that I see quick and immediate results. So now if you take them into a high performance environment and they're going to a club, the club is marketed themselves as we're an elite club playing in an elite league. We're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z thing for your kid's development. And if that doesn't happen after a year, there might be frustration on the end from the player. There might be frustration on the end from the parent, and they're going to want to look for the next opportunity. And I think that's where your philosophy as a club really needs to be clear. Your player development framework really needs to be clear, which is something that got revamped on the B license with the federation, before they had these roadmaps, and now it's a player development framework, which I really, really enjoyed diving into on the course. Sorry, to not loop it back to the club piece and coming back with the buy-in. If those things are really clear, it makes it a lot easier to be able to sit down with someone and talk to them about the long-term road, right? I'm on an 8-hour drive to Ohio. In order to get to Ohio to see family, I first got to go through Maryland. Once I go through Maryland, then we go into West Virginia. Once we go in West Virginia, then we're in Ohio. But I can't just go straight from Virginia to Ohio unless I hop on the plane. And even then, that's the different process. Or I'm trying to go with that is a player's development. Development isn't just a 1-year thing. There's a reason why the journey starts at U9, at least for us here. Like for travel, the first year that you can actually play travel in the 77 model is going to be at U9. And then that goes all the way through U19. So there can be growth from U13 to U14, but they're not done. And sometimes people just want to see the finished product after a year. My kid was on the second team. So going into next year, we want our kid to be on the first team. And then the team formation process happens, and maybe kids are close, but they're not there yet, or like the numbers aren't there on the first team. And then people get frustrated because it's like, oh, well, my kid's not on the first team. Well, okay, we're just going to go to another club. So again, if the club philosophy is not clear, if the player development framework isn't clear, if you have not clearly communicated what the long-term process is to get someone to help them get from point A to point B, because again, everybody expects that like there's some kind of recipe for success from getting point A to point B, but like there isn't, because again, every single kid is different. So their way of getting there is going to look different for every kid. For some kids, yeah, that means that after spending 1 year with the second team, they're ready for the first team. Other kids, it may be 2 years, 3 years. But again, like the thing is like, where are we by the end of the journey? Like if you're on the first team by U19, like Houston, we got liftoff, like you got there. Kids can be on the first team at U13, and then they might not be there by the time they're at U17.
I love that, and I think there's so much within that, and I love that key question, which I'm just noting down. Where are we by the end of the journey? And I think that relates to that three interrelated domains, because, for example, if you had life readiness as part of that, then how are you creating that long-term journey? How's that processing over a period of time? How's that looking? How is a player getting there? And how does that look different from, say, player A to, say, player B to player C? And now for outside stakeholders, and maybe even for the administration of where you are, they might be looking, right, we have this program, we have this syllabus, we want all our players to come through, we all want them to achieve this, so the process has to be this. But then that becomes quite different and quite difficult, because you're not then touches upon that robotic process and that basis. But you know, that's that we again it connects to those personalities, understanding them, the difference, who they are, why they're going through it, how they might have different perceptions, how they may process that, and there comes coaching, mentoring, guiding, teaching, and everything that combines all of that. So where are we by the end of the journey? So you might have players who, you know, you might have 10 players come through, 6 of them have achieved scholarship, 4 haven't. So why haven't these 4? The 4 haven't. The administration might be going, well, you haven't had success with these 4, so we've only had 60% pass rate. So 40% of that is a failure in that sense. But right, at the end of the process, right, they've got a job, they've come out with their degree, we've set them up on a mentoring program, we've got them a CV, and they've had an experience on the course, and they're in touch with joining a club, football, or the next kind of program beyond us. So is that success in itself? Yes. So where are they by the end of the journey? Successful because they're set up to do something beyond us. So therefore, part of those 3 interrelated domains, or one of them, we've had success within that. So that process and that journey, just because it hasn't ended up in a scholarship, which is the ideal, we've still had an impact and worked with them, and we've developed their cognitive thinking. We've instilled some teaching and learning with them, and there's so much within that. And part of that journey, obviously, as we touched upon, is failure, and they have to experience that. They have to experience adversity. So say you're on this long-term process, you set up this program. Do you think there's a place, or do you think you should deliver sessions that would ensure a sense or an objective or an outcome whereby there is failure within that training session so players can experience it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think like, you know, for example, one of our assignments on the B license was co-constructing an IDP with a player. And it was a 2-part process. Like part 1 was the setup, like, you know, define, you know, the context and, you know, identify the developmental needs of the player, and like letting the player identify those developmental needs as well as creating short-term goals and long-term goals for themselves. And then by the end of the season, we come back to that and try to like find some metrics and some objective data to help them figure out like, have you achieved the goals that we set out for you? So, you know, I did this 2 days ago, actually. I got, you know, for us at our club, one of the things that we do, like we'll meet with players anytime to give them evaluations, but we want it to be a player-led process so they can start working on those self-advocacy skills, and so they can collaborate in this process and give them some ownership over their own development. And usually we'll let them tell us, what are you identifying as 3 of your own strengths, and what are you identifying as 3 of your own developmental needs, and from there we can give them feedback. Or I can take it into a longer session like I did on Monday, where players will ask, like, hey, can we hop on a Zoom with a parent, and can we watch film? So I sat down, I pulled up like the first half, like I'll put on like ×2 speed to make it easier for getting points to clips, but then like we'll get a chance to see the game from a different perspective and start breaking down things. And I think over time, like process, like you give kids like, hey, these are 3 developmental needs, like let's create action steps for you to work on them over the next month to 3 months, and then let's reevaluate that and see whether, like, is this something that needs to continue to be working on, or can we find new 3 developmental needs to work on? If you just tell kids like a million things that they have to get better at, it's just like with coaching. Like if your training session plan isn't focused and you don't have a clear game moment that you're working on or clear coaching points, you end up coaching everything. And or as Gareth would say, as you're coaching everything, you end up coaching nothing. So same thing with these, like as we co-construct IDP plans, like they have to be concise, and you have to give them enough that they can actually be able to work at it. Because if you just give them a bunch to work on, they're going to be trying to work on everything at the same time that they're going to actually make progress on none of it.
And when it comes down to that, then, as you're coaching everything, you're coaching nothing. I think that's so powerful in itself and really a key consideration, because we want to give our athletes, we want to give our students absolutely everything at times. We think, right, I have to cover this, I have to do that, or I've seen Jurgen Klopp do this, or I've seen that on YouTube. And then suddenly you're breaking away so many parts, you're like, oh, this. And then suddenly it's not refined, it's not synergized, it's not linking up. And therefore, you're not actually delivering, say, a core basis of content whereby it's actually stimulating or actually beneficial to really take players to a high end of learning or coaching. So when it comes to that, and say refine, and this is why we have curriculums and syllabuses, etc. But when it comes down to it, and part of your delivery, and even where you might find yourself away from, a different type of program or what you can give players, do you think you have to then certainly refine, or think that you're going to refine, say, your processes, and therefore, hence, that's where philosophy comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that was another thing on the course. What I really enjoyed about the B license, in the 6-month process, I felt it was the first coaching course that I got to be on where I was also really intentional about everything that I'm working on. I wanted to be able to apply it to my environment and use it for the future. And that was, I'll give him a shout out here. My instructor was Stefan Siebert. And he told us one of the goals for us was by the end of this, that you're able to have a portfolio of stuff that you're actually able to use. And so one of them was my first time like creating a periodization plan that had, macro, like there was the macro cycle and then the mesocycles within it. And from there, the actual micro cycle. So like I sat down and I like mapped out like, okay, I got 52 weeks within a calendar year, and this is what my typical youth setting looks like in the fall and spring competitive seasons. Like, how do I start breaking that down? And so I think like there's a period for me where like, in the off season, maybe for me, it'll be like a little more technically focused in like cognition and general concepts, maybe work on like individual tactics and small group tactics, which is methodology I picked up in my UEFA B license with the German FA. And then once the competitive season starts, now we get into the tactical periodization, and you're making very intentional choices about what you're working on that week. So for me, usually on a topic, like it's usually in the attacking or the defending phase of the game, and then I'll pick thirds to work on, and I'll try to have that where the topics pair up with each other. So, maybe, one week I'm working on defending in the defending third. And now from that, maybe for my opposition, the next week, then it would be attacking in the final third. So just kind of like looping back to teaching, even though my focus has changed, there's still that kind of check for understanding, because the concepts we worked on the previous week with that focus team, now they're becoming the opposition team, and we're checking to see do they still remember the concept they worked on last week? Because now I'm focusing on the attacking piece with the other side, but they're still having to apply those concepts from last week as they're defending against this attacking team. That's now my focus.
And I think that's where the importance of working as a coaching team, or being prepared to deliver the same session twice, to then flip on the other side of the team that you're delivering. So one week you're doing the attacking team, the second week you're doing it defending. So therefore you're building on the week before, you're instilling those learning blocks, you're trying to hit those objectives and outcomes. But then you've been given two different perspectives, you've been able to work with two different teams. So the defending team might have thought this on week one, but then by week two they're thinking something different, or they're combining it, because you've had the ability to work against them as well as with them, and same for the attacking team. So I think that's the importance of understanding that you've got two different teams within the one training session, how you combine it, and then that's where the emphasis and the importance of coaching comes from. And that's where the wonderful art of Dominic Rutan and what he's doing certainly comes in.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is, for first podcast, this is a blast.
Absolutely. And I think that, I had a set of questions which I typically have and are there to create a basis. But, we've literally dropped straight into a conversation. Suddenly we've gone into teaching, learning, pedagogy, environments, mentalities, microactions, failure, stimuli, millennials. We've talked about disconnect, right time, right context, cognitive learning, multiple intelligences, ring profiles, and then teaching and learning. And that is all being covered within an hour and 20 without being a planned session around it.
But that's what I've seen from everyone's review. They're saying like it's not, too, as what Monty told me to expect. I'm like, I told her, I'm like, hey, like I'm doing my first podcast. Like I've never done this before. Like any advice? And she's like, it's just going to be like a conversation. Like it's really, really, really easy with them. So I'm like, cool. Love it.
I love that.
That's what it's been. I've seen other podcasts. Like I know usually like compile a list of questions they're going to ask, so they kind of have an idea of who the guest is and what their background is. So it's kind of easier to frame conversations. Like for example, like this with Paul Marco, like it may be more coaching education related versus like a James Wagner show. It's at United Soccer Coaches, that might be more around sports science and that kind of stuff. But when it's just a conversation about the beautiful game, and you're just kind of shoot. What's our audience, by the way? Are we?
So typically, I think an audience would be coaches, those who are developing, educators. I've got some players who listen, and I've got a lot of school teachers, which I've pushed the podcast on as well.
Well, if we got kids on here, then I'll keep it PG. Then I was going to say something else, but I'll just keep it to, it's fun when you just get to, shoot the stuff.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. But other podcasts, and some guests ask me, right, to have a list of topics, can we talk about this topic? And I'm like, yeah, free flowing, I don't mind. And I'm like, I have this, but if you want to come back with this, I'm happy. But every coach I have on, it depends on who I have. So again, I've got these lists of questions, but every coach is unique and different. So whilst we fall in a conversation, we might go into like philosophy, or with us, we've gone into teaching and learning. So suddenly every episode's different. I'm like, do you know what? I've actually taken so much away. And then I might relate it to something that I've been doing or something that I've had an interest in or been reading. I'm like, do you know what? It actually connects really well. So as you've been speaking, I'm like, right, I listened to this podcast the other day. I got these notes. How can I relate it? And that's what I love about each and every episode and every guest that I get on. Every episode becomes unique and tailored to what they want, rather than, say, a set topic or series around what I would want on the podcast, for example. So I'm loving everyone who comes on, and I've loved having you on the pod, man, and especially as your life seems to be falling all together in all the right places.
Yeah, knock on wood. It's been like I told you when we were connecting. It's been a wild summer from. Yeah, B license ending, getting married, honeymoon, turning 30 in April. It's just like, I was joking with my girls' academy director on Monday, Bobby Papione. Like, I feel like I just like entered like a whole like new phase of life, and like now it's like adulting has just become so different just within a couple months. I mean, freaking like we called Geico to get car insurance, and like we're getting quotes, and they're like, oh yeah, like now you guys get like a married life discount and a multi-car discount. I'm like, what? So yeah, man, wild couple months.
Absolutely, all very exciting. I hope, but looks class.
Loving the ride for sure.
Yeah, it's looked class from the outside, mate. Honestly.
Thank you, man. Yeah, really glad that we got to do this and loop back. I think our conversation, like that's just like I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. So for us to have had a conversation, I think what we were trying to link up back in like March would have been a very, very different place, very different conversation. Or we're here now, and I feel a little freer. I don't have course to worry about. Don't have assignments to worry about. Just living life.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm loving it as well, because I got 2 days away from end of term and breaking up for summer, which I can't wait for. Uni's sort of finished for this year, and it's sort of a nice point because I just get to chat to everyone. I get to really focus on the podcast because come September, October, November, I'm dead into teaching, I'm dead into uni, I'm coaching on top of it. Then life kicks in. I'm like, oh, the podcast has been hard to sort of get conversations in, or I've got to rearrange with people because something's come up. But like right now, like life is good and I'm loving chatting to people. And even though like I've got home from work, I've had a bit of dinner, I've chatted to you. Now it's like 8:30. Then I might go for a shower, chill out, watch TV, bang straight into work tomorrow. I'm like, you know what? I really enjoyed last night chatting to whoever I had on the pod, and I'm like, it stimulates me because rather than going around, come home, have a bit of dinner, maybe watch a bit of TV, maybe go on the Xbox for like half hour. I'm like, do you know what? I actually structured my evening in some kind of way, but I've learned from it. I've met someone, I've chatted to them, I've been able to contribute to the podcast. I've met someone great, and I'm like taking all this away. I'm like, yeah, this is another reason why I love doing it as well.
And that's what it's all about. Is why we're here. It's for the connection piece.
Absolutely.
It's no fun being on an island by yourself. So yeah, any opportunity to chat with people about the beautiful game and just about life, it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Helps sparks new things for sure.
Well, I'm so pleased that we could get this arranged, especially at, as you say, a right time as well. And I've cut into an hour and a half of your time, and I'm very conscious how committed you are and everything that you've got on. But I'm glad that it's been your first podcast and you've been able to come on. I'd absolutely love to have you on again because it has been awesome, and like I'm talking to a professor as well of the game. But before you go, Dominic, I've got some quick fire questions that I'd like to throw at you.
Sure.
Fab.
Go for it.
If you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Ooh. Loud, empathetic, and genuine.
Yep, love that. Brilliant. Really good.
You can quote my wife.
A source from a strong source there, definitely, and verified.
Yeah.
If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
In a heartbeat, back home to Germany.
Yeah.
I moved here in '99, so I was 6 years old. But as a dual citizen, for me, Germany's always been number one. Like, if that had to be a choice, and like I had to give up a citizenship, like I would want to keep my German citizenship. So, to go back home and maybe just coach even the local team that's not playing the high division, but TSV Wiedlingen, or to work with some of the other teams in there. Like, yeah. No question, I want to go back home and be in Germany.
Love that. I think the German system's so awesome. Look at the amount of youngsters they're producing. I know they've struggled over the last few years in terms of that high end. But youth systems have been class.
Yeah, they got some work to do. I'm a little bit nervous about them hosting the Euro Cup, but I mean, like at this point, I'm having a hope that we get out of group stage. We're ranked 15th. The U.S. men's team is ranked higher by FIFA than the German national team, and never in my life did I think that that'll be a scenario I see. I mean, it's kudos to the U.S. men and what they're doing, but it just speaks to volumes about how much the men's national team's dropped off, and even the women's, like, they're ranked number 2, but I mean, it wasn't a convincing win against Vietnam in their friendly, and then they lost to Zambia, and like kudos to Lisa Cole and what she's done. But it's just like, wow, like what is going on with the national teams on both the men and the women's level?
Absolutely. Interesting seeing.
Anyways,
Interesting.
that's a different conversation for another time. All right, question number 3.
You've dropped in some really good names, but if you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
Any coach or manager? I'm sure it gets picked a lot, but I'd have to go with Jürgen.
Strong choice.
I'm reading a book by Ralph Höllenstein. It's like bring the noise or something like that, and it's just it's about his journey. I mean, this was it got into his career once he was at Liverpool, but it was before before he went on to win an FA Cup, Champions League, and then eventually the Prem. But just like his story, I think it's just really fascinating. Him having that big personality, but like I didn't know that I knew that he started at Mainz, but I didn't know that the start was while he was still a player at the twilight of his career, and then he got brought on to be like a player coach, and then that just took off from there. So I think he's fascinating. Like you always see like that big bright smile. Yeah, I would not mind having a pint or two with him.
I love that. I think that's brilliant and a good choice. Might be the same, but might be different. Who was or is your role model?
Ooh, yeah. I mean that's changed for sure over the years. I think it's like when I first started coaching, some of my coaching heroes were like Jupp Heynckes and what he did with that 2013 Bayern. It was, Joachim Löw and what he did with the national team. And, again, it was like golden generation, Germany winning the World Cup, top 5 happiest days of my life. I will never forget that day. It was also Gary Cernine, a modern soccer coach's podcast. So, I think a lot, those are like a lot of the early heroes. And now, as I've gotten older and I've been in the game a little bit longer, like I've had more mentors along the way, so some names that shout out at the local level, would be like Rayanne Taylor and Phil Liversedge, Bobby Papioni now at my current club, and Manya, my head coach. But then, really like 2 people, and we've talked about kind of moving to that coach developer role. I mean, 2 people that have really been impactful are Stefan Siebert, my instructor on the B license. Just what a great human. I mean, he was someone, I told him, I told the other instructors on the course, I did not want to do the assignments anymore. I was done with the work. But I did not want to stop learning and like being in a classroom, so it was him, and then Paul Marco previously, again work with him with the premier diploma. It's one thing being in a course as a student, but it's another thing like shadowing and trying to think in terms of an educator and to kind of go through that mental process of what they're going through and their cognition. And I mean, just the way that he's able to teach the game, but also like have that spatial awareness. It's like that show. What is it? The Queen's Gambit, where she does the chess in her head, and like Paul's doing that, but with a pitch and these different systems, and he has that ready to go. And here I'm thinking I'm doing pretty well. Like I'm going into year 8 of coaching. 2nd year of coaching college, I've done this so far with youth. I've got a couple of these licenses. And then, you listen to those 2 talk on 2 different courses and you're like, I am not there yet. And it's good to see kind of what are now some areas of growth and from the education perspective.
I love that. And so many great names within that and many which are, going to be there to really hear that and take that away. But one day your name's going to be mentioned in that accolade by someone else who's going to be on the podcast.
It's crazy. Yeah, I've had these talks with my wife. There's a point that you move from being a mentee. I mean, you always have mentors in your life, but there's a point where it's no longer like you're no longer like this is brand new, and it goes to that concept of stewardship. At some point you come into the game, and there's got to be a point now where it's what's your legacy? Like, how are you leaving something in a better place than when you came into it? So yeah, I mean it's gonna be wild when that happens someday. But
Absolutely.
Got some growing to do on my end, and a lot to learn still.
And I think it'll be great to see as well. And hopefully it happens. George Mendez becomes your agent. He has an array of offers in front of you. You've got the choice of any job to take in the world at any level. What job would you take?
Mine. Oh man. Any. So actually, my very first meeting with Stefan on the B license, like our first one-on-one student teacher meeting, he posed me because I talk about all these things that I like about the game. Like, I like coaching. One of my goals was that, I wanted to be at the ECNL level or like the Girls Academy level or like being like in a director role, like a DOC. But I also really like with Mason, I do a lot with film analysis and looking at our own performance trends, and I love that. For me, that's like a different kind of cognition and like a challenge for me. So I get that mental stimulation doing film, and I love that. And then I also talked to him about like I really want to get into coaching education. So he similar to what you're posing, he's like, okay, this MLS Academy calls, they have a director role for you. It's MLS Next Pro, and they're going to pay you $300,000 a year. But then this MLS club calls, let's say FC Cincinnati. They call and they have a film analyst role for you, and it pays $300,000 a year. But then, oh wait, U.S. Soccer Federation calls, and they have a full-time coaching educator position for you, and it pays $300,000 a year. What do you take? And I went with coaching education. So I think honestly, right now, like in a perfect world, if I could be a full-time coaching educator, and I've gotten to that point where I have that knowledge and that ability to teach student coaches, if I got that and I did not have to move to Kansas City and I got to live here, that would be the perfect setup, I think.
Who knows, right timings, and someone up there may be moving things around. You never know what might happen.
Never know, but if it's only in the coaching sense, if I had an opportunity to be involved with the German FA, whether it's at the with the Profis or with their youth teams, that would be a really, I think, like amazing experience to be able to work with, my home country and be involved with the federation at some capacity.
I love that.
Not the national team manager. I don't want to be in the spotlight. Heavens forbid, like one time I picked my nose on accident, and that becomes a freaking meme for everyone to post.
Exactly, Joachim Low V2.
Yogi Maron. Yeah.
Who is your all-time favorite player?
Thomas Müller.
Love Thomas Müller. What a player.
What a player. I mean, just, again, that goes to that cognition and perception piece, like just like the runs he makes and like that position of the Raumdeute, I guess the moniker. I think the first person that really got me to fall in love was Ronaldinho. I mean, like when YouTube was first out, those were like videos I was watching. And the first player that really got me, that kind of like helped respark me wanting to play was Mario Gomez when he was really in form from like 2010 to 2013. I just loved his celebration. I'm like, that's a strike right there. But Thomas Müller, I think, again, from the energy, the personality, the runs that he makes, now the way that he kind of acts as like a coach on the pitch. I'm not a Bayern fan, but I still love watching him when he plays for the team, and especially for the Nationalmannschaft. But yeah, what a character. so much fun to watch.
Absolutely.
And like, it's not even that he's like the most like technically gifted player, but I mean, it's just he makes things happen. And some of the goals, especially that 2014 World Cup, like it's just some of the goals he scored. I'm like, that's such a him goal that he's going to score, but it works.
Absolutely, I love it. Yeah, and that's what I mean. He's made moments which are massive, and especially a part of those Bayern times and certainly German times as well. But majorly Bayern, you don't have to be the most technical player. Just find a player who fits, and if they're clicking and what they can produce to get to those and elevate those levels. And I look at Xavi, for example, and Xavi is all there, and he's class, and he's not even the most technical players compared to like Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, etc., or Zidane. But he's one of my favourite players because he's just like sliding balls and he's recovering simple passes, and that's how he ended up playing like 900 games in his career.
Yeah. But what about you? Your all-time favorite?
Xavi and Ronaldinho.
Xavi?
Yeah.
Okay. Two great selections.
Absolutely. My best mate, I can get into his head easy, and I'll just go to him. Xavi's better than Zidane. Boom. Argument started.
I'm sure that gets heated.
I love it, but it's just so easy to start a debate, and that's one of my podcast episodes coming up, that is.
Yeah. All right, I'll have to listen. I'll have to give that one a listen.
Yeah, it's going to be...
The ones that I hate getting suckered into is when anybody wants to try to get you to debate with them that, like, they're like, who's better than Messi? And it's like, I mean, before I used to be able to, especially with my kids, like, I would argue with my students why I thought Messi wasn't the greatest player of all time. And I told them all, like, I will shut my mouth if he wins the World Cup.
Yeah.
He won a World Cup. He's done it all, so I'm...
Absolutely.
I got nothing to say.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh. Teaching or coaching or life?
All three, or pick one. Don't mind.
I really, really get irritated when I explain something and I go through the directions and then a kid goes, so what are we doing?
Yeah.
Bro.
Absolutely.
that will just that'll get me going. Life thing, when I'll look at people's outfits. So when it's a poorly tied knot on a tie, and then when the shoes and the belt don't match.
So if you had a brown belt and say black shoes, no go?
No. No. I mean, I'm not going to say anything, but I'll be like,
yeah,
that's not it. That's not it.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than a brown shoe, brown belt combo.
When it comes to clothes.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, it's always, belt and shoes will match, dress shirt and socks will match, and then tie and pocket square have to match.
Love that.
Not that I'm going to suit all that often, but...
Hey, if there's ever a coach's dinner, the best dressed coach award will go to yourself.
Or certainly the most color coordinated one.
There you are. I love that. I love that, honestly. What is your favourite thing to do in your downtime? And it's probably organise your suits and socks.
Actually, yeah, I got the screen on, but in the background would be my closet. It's all color coordinated and coordinated by clothing type. But yeah, downtime. Like honestly, like when I can, I'm not busy. Like I really do enjoy playing golf. I love sucking at it. It's a rare day when I break 100. But honestly, for me, I grew up watching a lot of TV and movies. So, for me, when I really, really need to recharge, I need a break from things. It's like I can sit on a couch one day and bang out shows or movies for 12 hours straight. Like that for me is like shut off, like recharge, and then like I'm good to go after that.
Love that.
Now it's Ozarks on Netflix. I'm a little behind the game, but I finally started watching that, and that's.
I think I got to like episode 2 or 3, and I was like a bit of a slow start, but I need to get back into it. So it's on my to watch list. It's definitely up there, so I need to watch it.
Yeah, it definitely was slow start. It's a similar. Did you ever see Schitt's Creek?
Yeah, bits of it, yeah.
the same thing, Schitt's Creek. I remember watching like the first. I think I watched like the first 3 episodes. I'm like, and then I came back to it like a couple weeks later, and then like by that 4th episode, I'm like, oh, and I'm so glad I didn't give up on it, because what a show that is.
Absolutely. What are your non-negotiables? Free non-negotiables.
In regards to,
could be coaching, could be a combination of coaching and life and how you interlink them. It's up to you.
Lying, I really do not like. I really get uncomfortable when I'm asked in any facet, when I'm asked to bend the truth. Like I've never done that. Like growing up, like when something happened, even like for some of the worst things I have in my life, like my parents knew about it. However long it took me to maybe tell them, but I don't think I've ever gone more than like maybe 2 weeks without saying something. But lying is one. I've never been asked this before. Non-negotiables. It's the first time I've had to think about an answer on the show. Yeah, lying is one. Quitting. I mean, it's it's a choice for everyone to make, and they make their choice, and we have to give the power and freedom to individuals to make their own decisions, especially kids. That comes back to that failure piece, but it's a little more than a pet peeve. But I mean, just for me, like, whether it's with players or students or like people in your life, like you can't. You can't help someone, like I don't believe in like the 50-50. Like there's never a scenario where like it's always going to be split. Maybe it is for like a day or two, but some days like somebody's only going to be able to give 40 and the other person's got to give 60. Maybe it's like some person can only give 10 and you got to pick up 90. But for it to be 0 and there's nothing, like I tell my students, I'm like I can't meet you if you give me 0. The same with the players. I can't meet you if you give me 0. I can't serve you. So like quitting and just giving up and just stopping, it's yeah. And I guess that kind of, like, as I'm thinking about it, like that leads me to that third piece, and that's like the communication. I and that's also like one of my 3 pillars with coaching. So individualized relationships, coaching for cognition, and then maintaining open lines of communication. I've had it happen in friendships where like if like the communication piece isn't strong, people always tell you that they're understanding of your situation until they're not. Right? And the communication isn't there, like it leaves a lot up to imagination. People can come up with their own assumptions, and then that can kind of start feeding into, that turns from thought into prejudice, which then turns into, action. So, I've been blessed, like my relationship, or like one of our really core pieces of our foundation was communication. So that's like in my personal life. I think from coaching, maintaining those open lines of communication with players and the other stakeholders. There has to be a degree of transparency when you're talking with parents and players. Yeah, you have to. And I think it's the same thing within the classroom. Like the communication's got to be there. Like if it's not, it just creates so many more problems versus just being honest, even if it's a really shitty conversation.
Absolutely, and transparency in that, again, relationships, that buy-in, that consistency, and everything that we can deliver to really work with the players and the people in front of us to be open and honest and create that why is going to really help us in terms of our coaching those relationships, that delivery, that teaching, and everything that's combined in those worlds whilst we work with these individuals in front of us.
Yeah,
absolutely. What does reflection mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing process. I think there has to be a degree of objectivity in there, like a sense of what's the word I'm looking for? A form of dissociation. Like you gotta remove yourself in a way and be able to see it come from an outside perspective. I think like for me, it's like you really got to take a step back, and I think for me it starts here. I do believe like I have, I like to like internalize things first, and then from there it's having a conversation about it, and that's ongoing. Whether that conversation's with a friend, maybe that conversation's with yourself, and you're kind of having that conversation up in your head. Sometimes it's writing it down and journaling, like on a training session. And a lot of times reflection is looking at, really like objective data and feedback. Like it was one of our assignments on with the B license, like whenever we filmed a training session, now we had to do a reflection and analysis of our entire session. So you're looking at like the amount of time that you spend talking versus the amount of time that the ball is rolling. And I remember like the first two sessions I recorded, I think like the first time, let's say I was trying to get to a session where the demand of the session was 75%. It was a threshold session. And I ran it. And by the time I got back the numbers, like my players only got to like 59% or 65% because of the amount of time that I lost transitioning from one activity to the next, or the amount of time that I spent trying to talk to the players and explain the activity. And so really clearly, like right there, it's like, okay, I got like hard evidence in front of me that tells me I did not accomplish X, Y, and Z because of, and that from there is for me to find out, why didn't I get there? Why did I spend 3 minutes transitioning from one activity to the next? Oh, it's because, well, I wasn't clear with what players need to pick up what equipment and help them move it off, or maybe I didn't set things out before that I could have set. So I guess I can look a couple different ways for me.
Absolutely. And when it comes to say measuring, say that transition, and you built up a period of time, say 3 minutes, was that someone recording you with say a camera or video, or was it them timing you? How did you measure that just on that point there?
Yeah, no. So I have a VO camera, so I would record with the VO, and then for my audio, because VO is kind of iffy on how it picks up the audio, so I would just record the audio with an AirPod, and then I'd have to do a little bit of video editing to get the audio and the video to sync up, and then from there, so I would education. Shout out Addict brand and their notebooks. Let's see, training session. Where's a good one? Jeez Louise. Yeah, it's kind of a little blurry here, but I would literally I would sit there with stopwatch. Like I would, as soon as the session started, I would start it. Okay, if I'm talking, I would record from like on here. Okay, from 0 seconds to 1:35, I was talking. Okay, from 1:35 to 5:35, players were doing dynamics, so I would highlight that in a different color. Okay, from 5:35 to 7:55, I had it marked in yellow, so that means I was probably talking. 7:55 to 9:25. They did work. So like I would just literally like anytime there was a different moment, like I would timestamp it. I mean, it takes some time. I mean, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of work. So I would timestamp stuff. I would literally write down. They talk about different learning teacher interventions, learning interactions that you can have from the coach's toolkit. So like, check and adapt, giving positive feedback, use of key question or keywords, asking questions, demonstrating, giving feedback, using command. So I literally mark every time, like I thought it was a moment that I gave players feedback or I gave players positive reinforcement. Yeah.
I love that.
It's just, it's the same with film. Like I know other people with film, they like using Instat or other programs that does it for you. For me, like I need to sit down and I will watch every second. Is it the most efficient use of my time? No, but everything that I'm looking for, I'm going to be able to find.
I really love that.
Yeah.
I love that, and I love that notebook, honestly. So detailed, so colour-orientated. And some of the staff that I work with just cannot look at my spreadsheets that we share in work because I'm like, I love colour, I love seeing this, and it's just easier for me to pull off colour than looking through a mundane task sheet or what we need to. But on a touch of that, though, on that reflection, and as you say, it's not a smart way of time, as you've said there, it is in a way because you're looking and getting that detail of what you want away from it and what you want to come out with. And if you're refining your sessions, then it's smart. But how much time would you say that you're spending reflecting then?
Particularly like outside of the course or like for example, like doing something like this.
Yeah, doing something like that.
Like that took me for a 80 to 90 minute. No, it was I think it was an 80-minute training session. Just that to collect everything, I think took about 2 hours, I would say.
I love that. So typically, would you consistently do that, or would that just be say like a once a month thing? How would you tend to go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, again, in a perfect world, and we spend a lot of, I spend a lot of time with my instructor talking about this, imagine like if you're only coaching one team, you only have one job. Like that's just not my current situation. I have multiple roles. So I think right now kind of what I'm limited to is getting to internalize what happened and to think about it and to process it. And then having an opportunity to talk with someone and getting their perspective on it, whether it's, my head coach, Mason, or my academy director at FCV, or, with my wife. Like that's kind of like, I think what I have a capacity to do right now, because I work with, again, I got the teaching gig, I got my 3 youth teams, and then also assisting with the college program. So time is tight.
I can imagine, absolutely, especially with that combination of everything else, and then going back to the wife. Oh yeah, I just got one more session tonight. Oh, we got an extra game on this week.
Yeah, yeah. So then sit down and also like try to spend 2 hours recording it. Like, I think it'd be something to really be useful to do. At the very least, like maybe once a season, so you can kind of. Yeah, I think it'd be useful to do once a season, but again, that goes back to time management, and kind of I think where I am now is, when I do have the time and I have free time and it's not work, like being intentional with that time and spending it with family and other people, because I think especially in our industry, it can be really easy to get sucked into it. And there's so much that can be done all the time, so many things to be curious about, questions you want to ask, answers you want to try and find, people you want to learn from. And then eventually, like when you pick up your head again, you realize like there went the whole week or there went the whole 3 months and I haven't scheduled time with friends since I don't know when.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's just similar. The last time my mate said, "We fancy going out for some dinner," and I was like, "Yep, come on," because I won't see you otherwise, or I haven't seen you in a few weeks, and just being in with that. And I think that links so nicely to what Jason Edwards said the other day: being intentional with time and understanding the importance of it, because we don't know how much time we're limited to in life, and once that final minute ticks, we can't get those back. So being intentional with it and not losing out on it is so important. Absolutely.
Right.
I love that. And just to touch on that beforehand, I remember going to a session once and I was watching the current head coach. He delivered a dynamic warm-up. The players got warm. And then after he warmed up, so it's a typical winter's evening, we're on 3G. We got an hour session late at night. Boys been in school all day. But he delivered the warm-up and then he spoke to them for 10 minutes. I was like, right, we've cut into almost 15, 20 minutes of this hour session.
Yeah.
You've done a warm-up, but guess what? They're all freezing cold now because you've got them standing still chatting at them. And then how much did they actually retain or take away from it?
Right.
So, yeah, that was a huge learning curve for him. You've touched upon a lot. You've spoken about a lot. You've highlighted a lot. But what is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
There's always ways to grow. And truly, and I think I spent some time, the last week I was thinking about it. So one of the instructors that was on the Premier Diploma course that I got to shadow, he's, one of the instructors, he's been, his name was Gregor. He's been coaching for college for 30 years. So, hearing that, I'm just like, okay, you've been there for 30 years. Like, what do you feel is an area that you feel like you want to really grow in, still, or, stuff like that. I've been asking a couple of people, and, everyone's giving back the same answer of, the moment that you stop, the moment that you think you've got it all figured out is probably the moment that you need to step away from the game. So I like, for me, it's why I love it. I mean, I even with teaching in a classroom setting, there's always more stuff that you can learn that helps you create better stories, new pedagogy, and stuff like that. But, the highest I'm ever going to go with being a teacher is a teacher. There is no next step. And I think one thing that makes fun with coaching, there's so many different avenues to go with coaching education. There's all these next steps that you can go. There's so many facets of the games to keep growing, and coming into the B license for me, a big thing was physical periodization. I've heard about it on courses. I have no idea what it looks like in a practical sense, or how to apply it to my environment. Spend 6 months working on the B license, cool. I feel like I got a good idea on that. Sitting here listening to some of the points that were on the Premier Diploma, and they're talking about counter pressing and rest defending. I'm like, oh my God, tactically, these aren't things I haven't really thought of or worked with. Now that's something else I got to think about. How's that look from system versus system? Developing your game model. That's another area, another area of growth. So I just think there's so many, the game is so dynamic and always, funny, I'm going to say evolving, but honestly, everything that we're seeing technically is just we're kind of bringing back things from the past. I just think there's always room to grow. There's always opportunities for that cognitive stimulation. It can always help keep you young.
Absolutely.
And
that minute that I've quoted you on in terms of stepping away because of the time that you think you know it all, you're absolutely not the first coach to say that. So for that consistency, for that quote, without having to speak to other coaches or say I'm quoting this coach, for you to bring it up and other coaches to say it, I think just hammers home an absolute key message that is consistent on every episode or a lot of episodes that are coming up. So I think it's definitely showing and relating.
You're I got my new sub series for the podcast. That's a whole separate playlist. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Dominic, honestly, your time has been hugely appreciated, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and you've really taken it away, and I've loved just in the corner of my eye watching the time tick up, because as I'm watching time tick up, I'm like, right, he's getting there, he's getting closer. And I think if I can extend the intro a little bit, I think I can just get away with you taking top spot for the longest recorded episode as well.
Love that.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a longer intro than anything, or I might do a summary at the end, which might be something new. But whilst I've had some other conversations, I'm like, I haven't just got there. But when I checked the longest time before, Veronica Hastings, who took away 2 hours, 20 minutes, she absolutely killed that time. But I've been watching everyone and she's kept it. But I think I can get you to top spot, which has been an absolute pleasure, because as I said and summed up earlier, the amount of points which we have hit and spoken about, and even though we've done quick fire and it's taken us half an hour, and absolutely accolades to you, because you've gone into depth, you explained it, you've unpacked it, you've related it, you've given it to experience, you've led it, you've incited it, you've explored it, you've story told. There is so much within that quick fire which I've absolutely loved, and when coaches and yourself has taken that away, I just absolutely love the context, and that creates just the next sort of step up from quick fire questions. So again, I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that time has fitted in well and suited you, and especially when you say considering the time when we were in the original contact in March. But so glad we can make this happen, especially on the back of a first aid course and learning and building this in and fitting it in around the time that you may have away from the office, etc. But planning something else in is really, really appreciated. And as I said, it's like listening to a professor speak. But honestly, it's been so wonderful to speak to you, and I'm so glad it could be your first podcast episode. But absolutely killed it, honestly.
Hey man, I really appreciate it too, and thank you for creating the right conditions for it to just be an organic conversation. Again, like you're like, hey, 5 last questions, rapid fire, and that's turned into however long since then. So I mean, thank you, man, for just being someone that's so easy to talk to, and making it all, like, going back to that relatability piece. Been an absolute blast. Again, I appreciate you looping back around to it, because I know, again, we tried, it didn't work out, and we're here now. So thank you for sticking with it. And what a ride!
Absolutely,
we got there.
Absolutely, it's been amazing, and honestly, I do really appreciate your time, and it has been such a blast, and it's a huge thank you and appreciation from me. And honestly, I wish you the best of luck, because you truly deserve it, mate.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Now, for you, like, do me a favor, like, go see your parents.
That's it, yeah.
And tell them happy anniversary from the whole coaching community.
That's it, yeah. I could just see my dad a couple of hours ago coming back from the gym, and I was like, right, as soon as this ends, I'll just nip downstairs and whatever. But I appreciate that, mate. Honestly, I really do, and just a true testament to who you are. But absolute pleasure. Let's stay in touch, and honestly, it's a huge thank you from me.
Oh yeah, man. Appreciate you. Thank you.
No worries. Cheers. Thank you, Dominic.
All right. Cheers, man.
See you later.